Hey, what's up, guys? So I wanted to make a new video series, and in this series, we'll be going through a tutorial about how to make a simple app that lets you look up movies or TV shows using the MovieDB's API. So real quick, I want to talk about the tech that we'll be using in this project. We'll be building the front end with React, and we'll be using Node and Express to create our server and to communicate with the MovieDB's API. This will be a no database project, so we're just going to be working on the front end and on the server side. So I want to go ahead and give you guys a sneak peek of what the project looks like so you guys have a rough idea of what to expect and what we'll be making. So let me switch my computer screen real quick. Okay guys, so here is a sample of what the project looks like so far. Now with this, I've only spent a few hours on this, so it's definitely not done yet. There's a lot of functionality I want to add to it, but the rough draft is here. So basically, this is your landing page. You come in, you can search for films. Down here, it just pulls the most popular films in movie theaters right now, and it shows you basic information like the title and the rating. Just to show you guys the search functionality, let's say I want to watch Star Wars. Let's look up Star Wars movies. You can search, and then a list of all Star Wars movies will pop up. So yeah, it's nowhere near done yet, but that's the base functionality that we want to have for this app, and that's what it looks like so far. So ideally, I envisioned for this series to be about 35, maybe 40 minutes long, with each video coming in around 12 minutes. So this is part one. I just gave you guys a basic introduction to the app. For the rest of this video, I want to kind of talk about how to get your API key and how to get your app bootstrapped and started with Create React App. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and get our API key. So this project is powered by the MovieDB's API. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up a new tab here, and I will go to the moviedb.org. Their website has all the documentation on the API, so it shows you what kind of data you can request, all that good stuff. But to get our API key, you need to make an account first. I've already made one, but if you want to make an account, then you click up here and, well, let me log out real quick. If you want to make an account, then you can click sign up. Just enter all your information in here. I already have an account, so I'll just log into mine. Once you make an account and you log in, this is the page that you'll see. And in order to get an API key, click on the little icon up here and go to account settings. Once you're at the account setting page, on the left-hand side of the page here, there's a link that says API. If you click on that, there will be a button at the bottom that says register new API key or request new API key, something like that. Just click here, click on the button that says request API key. You'll get an email. It takes a couple minutes to process, and they'll send you your API key. So now that that is taken care of, we can go ahead and move forward and set up our application. So to set up our application, we're going to start in the terminal. So I'm going to use my Spotlight search. If you guys don't know how to make that pop up, you just hold Command and press the space bar on Mac. Windows, I think you guys are out of luck. So yeah, I pulled up my terminal here, and you want to go to whatever directory you want for this project to be in. For me, that's going to be, I have a projects folder. So from here, if you have Node and Create React App installed on your computer already, then you can go ahead and just run Create React App and name that project whatever you want to name it. If you're a complete newbie and you don't have that stuff set up yet, that's okay. I'll show you real quick. So go back to your internet browser, and you're going to want to go to Node's website. I'll just Google Node.js. And once you get there, there's a download button here. So I already have it installed, but you can just click here. It'll download it. And it'll also, I believe it downloads NPM, Node Package Manager. I believe that is included with Node. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, someone please correct me. But after you get that installed, go back to your terminal, and here I ran two commands, node-v and npm-v. That just checks for the version of Node and npm that you have, and if everything's installed, then you should see this. The versions might be different depending on when you're watching this video, but these are the most up-to-date versions as of right now. So after you have Node and NPM installed, we can go ahead and download a Node package from the terminal called Create React App. Create React App is just an easy way to get React projects started. It has a lot of built-in configuration, so you don't have to mess with Webpack and all that stuff. So in order to install Create React App on our computer, you'll need to run npm install -g create-react-app. So after you run npm install -g and you install Create React App, you can use it now. So go ahead and go to whatever directory you want for this project to be in. For me, it's my projects folder. And then from there, you can run Create React App. Make sure there's dashes in between each word. Hit the space bar and then type in whatever you want for the name of your project to be. I'll just name this Movies. And now it's going to initialize my project. It's going to install a bunch of packages and it's going to create a folder called Movies. As you can see right here, actually, in my projects folder, there's another folder called Movies now, and that's going to hold all of the files for this new application. So this will usually take a couple minutes to process. Okay, cool. So now I'm still in my projects directory. If I listed all the files in it with ls, then you can see there is a new, there you go, there's a new folder called Movies. So I'll just cd into that. Okay, and then now that I'm in my project folder, I want to start it. I want to open this folder in my favorite text editor. I use Atom. If you're using Visual Studio Code, you can set up so you can type code, whatever. Some of you guys, this might not work for you if you haven't set up the shortcut yet, but you can still just open your text editor and then open the file from there. That'll still work. So let's open this up in Atom. Okay, so this is my Movies folder, and I have all my project files in here. Okay, now I want to show you what Create React App does for us. So I'm going to go back to the terminal, and I'm in the directory that my project stored in right now. I'll just run npm start. Okay. So this is what Create React App does for us. It gets all the initial setup done. So this is just a bare bones Create React app. I want to start over from scratch. So the first thing I'm going to do is under your source folder in app.js, I'm just going to delete everything in between these divs. All right. And I'm going to replace that with an H1 that says my app. Let's go my movie app. Okay. We'll go ahead and save that, and then we'll pull it up on the screen here. And you'll see now, now we're starting with the fresh slate. Everything's blank except for your title, my movie app. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we want to initialize our Node server. So what you can do is in the root directory, create a new folder. And this is just personal preference for how I like to set up my file structure. Yours doesn't have to be the same exactly as long as you know what you're doing. So I'm going to set up a server folder, and inside that folder I'll have a file called index.js. This is going to be our Node server. And I guess this is kind of thinking ahead, but I want to set up my the file structure for my front end as well. So I'm going to make a new folder called components inside a source. Okay, and this is where I'll store my components. All right, let's go back to our index.js here. Now, if we know that we want to run Node and Express Server with this app, then we're going to need to install the packages. So I'm going to say npm install --save. And the packages that we're going to use in here are going to be Express, Cores, Body Parser, and Axios. I think that's it for now. So I'll just run that command. I'm using the built-in terminal right now. You can also do this command from the terminal that we initialized the project from. You might need to open up a new tab since this tab is currently running your project, but you can do the same thing. So this will take a second to set up, and while I'm doing that, I'll talk about the Express server. Setting up an Express server, usually what I do is I just reference an old project, but let me see if I can do this from memory right now. So first thing you want to do is you want to bring in express. So express equals require express. Then you want to bring in your all the middlewares we installed. So we have two for this project. We're using cores. So cores takes care of cross-origin requests for us. And then we have another one called body parser. And what I'm doing here is I'm just destructuring the JSON method from body parser. So basically, whenever we're sending or requesting data over the web, the standard is for that data to be formatted as a JSON file, JavaScript object notation. So what cores does is it parses that data for us into a JSON format automatically, so we don't have to worry about it. I believe I'm going to need Axios too, because we're going to use Axios to make calls to the API. And I think that's it for now. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to initialize our server. And to do that, we'll say const app equals express invoked. And this is just saying every time we reference the word app, it's a variable that references the express server. So we'll do that. I like to declare my port up here as well. I use 3001 usually, so we'll do that as well. And after you initialize your server, you want to bring in your middlewares. So we're using cores and body parser. So we'll say app.use cores invoked, then app.use JSON invoked. In JSON, we do structured from body parser up here. Okay. Now, below that, I like to put my endpoints. So this is going to be later. We don't have any endpoints right now. So I'll leave that section blank. And then down here, I'm going to say app. I think it's app.listen. It's going to take in port, and then a callback function that basically just says, this just lets us know that our server is listening. And then I can just reference port up here. Now if I type node server slash, it should tell me my server is live on port 3001. Cool. Okay guys, so to recap what we just did, first we obtained an API key. Next we used create React app to get our app initialized. So we have a front end, and then we started a server, a Node server. And so right now we have a React front end and a Node server. And next thing we want to do is to get those two parts to communicate with each other. So how are we going to do that? First thing I like to do is if you go back to your app.js file, okay, and from here we want to set up a test endpoint. So I'm going to use the component will mount lifecycle hook. And here, I need to import Axios. So we'll import Axios at the top, because I'm going to make an Axios call to my server. It's going to be a GET request, axios.get. And here I'm going to make up an endpoint. So I'll say /API/test, and needs a promise. So once it gets that response, I just want to console.log on my front end response.data. Okay, and that's how you set up the endpoint on the front end. So now that we've got that set up, we want to go to our server side, and right here I set up this section for endpoints. We have a GET request running from the front end, axios.get. The server needs to receive it, so it'll read and it'll say app.get, and then wherever the endpoint is /API/test. Once it sees this, it needs to run a function. So we're going to do a callback function here. And all we want for that function to do is send a status code of 200 if it's successful, and send back this in JSON format that says test successful. Is that how you spell it? Yeah. Okay. So we'll save that. let's see, I'll restart my server. If you're running Node Mon, it'll do that for you automatically, but I'm just using Node right now. Okay, so our server's up, and now I just want to go back to our app.js file. What this says is that every time this page loads or this component renders, it'll make an Axios call to this test endpoint that we defined /API/test, and then once it gets the response, then it'll console log our response.data. On the server side, your app is listening for get request to /API/test. Once that endpoint is hit, then there's this callback function here that basically says I'm just going to send back status code 200, which means that the process was, which means that the request was processed successfully. And then also use the body parser to send back test successful in JSON format. So let's test this real quick. This is our application. I'm going to open up our console. Okay, and then I'll refresh the page and see what happens. It says cannot get to localhost 3000 /API/test. That's because our server is running on localhost 3001. I'm not sure why my computer's doing that right now. Usually you don't need to specify like this, but my computer's acting up. So I'm gonna have to specify to localhost 3001 because that's where we initialize our server. And now when I refresh the page, it gives me the test successful message. So that's great, that's good. So now that we've got our front end and our Node server connected, we're ready to make actual calls to the MovieDB's API to request real data. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create a config.js file in the root directory of our project. And what your config.js file will do is it will hold all of our private information, like your API key, for example. You don't want if you're going to push this up to GitHub, for example, you don't want for your API key to be public. Otherwise, someone's going to steal it and try to use it and max it out. And yeah, it's just best practice to not do that. So in order to prevent that, we can go in our git ignore, and you can add config.js. Basically, it says anytime you're pushing something up to GitHub or you're adding or committing, it's not going to include the config.js file. Okay, so in your config.js, type in module.exports and then equals, and then curly braces. This is going to be an object of everything that you want to export. So the first thing you want to export is your API key. Your API key is going to be a string. So earlier we requested an API key. By now you should have gotten an email back from the MovieDB with your API key information. Just go ahead and type that in here and prepend it with $API key equals. Sorry, that should be API underscore key equals and then whatever your API key is. Before that, we can also, this is optional, but I like doing this. You can just set the API URL. And so I have this copy and pasted from earlier. I'll put it in here. It's just https api.themoviedb.org/3. This is just the base URL for all requests to the MovieDB's API. This was all in their documentation, but just to save you some time, this is what it is up here. Okay. So now we've got our config file set up. I want to go back in here and I want to go back in my index.js and I want to bring the API key and the API URL into my index.js. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to say const and I'm going to destructure the API URL and API key from my config.js. So you just need to find the file path. So just to test it, I'm going to console.log, API URL, API key, okay, and then we're going to reset the server and see what happens. Okay, let's see what I did wrong here. I forgot my comma here. So we'll save that, and now this is what we get here. This is going to be your request, pretty much. Okay, guys, so at this point, we're ready to request some actual data. So In order to make a request to the movie DB's API, if you go to their docs, let's say you go to the website, you can click API up here. On the left-hand side, where it says API, you can click on Discover Examples, and this will give you a bunch of samples for different endpoints within the API that you can use. So for what we're doing, we just want all the popular movies. So you can test this out in your browser. All you need is three things. First thing you need is the base URL, which we copied right here. You need the endpoint, which for this example, I believe is going to be, it's going to be /movie/popular, and then after that, you can put in your API key. I've left mine blank because I don't want it to be public, but once you press enter, this is the result that you should get. I'm using an add-on, so my JSON looks nice and formatted. The raw format probably looks something more like this, which is not as nice. If you want this extension, it's a Chrome extension called JSON Formatter, super handy for developers. So this is the data that we get back from the MovieDB's API. It has an array called results, and results contains objects with different movies in it. So you can see we've got a Star Wars, got Jumanji, It. Okay, so this is exactly what we need, and so now let's make that call to this URL in our application. Okay, so now I want to go back to my app.js or the front end, and what I want to do is I want to make another call to my server. So we had a test endpoint here. I'm going to change this now. We don't need this anymore. I'll change that from /API/test to /API/movies, and then in the server side, change the endpoint to /API/movies, and this time you don't want to send back test successful. You want to send back this JSON object with all the movies in it. So what we'll do is we'll make an Axios call in our server to the actual API. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our API URL. Remember, this is just whatever address you have up here. You can just copy and paste that if you'd like, but since we broke it down into individual parts, you can just do it this way too. So API URL /movie/popular, and then you need your API key. Okay, and then now we're gonna wait for a response, and once we get the response, we want to res.status 200, then send back that response as a JSON object. Okay, so if I did this correctly, we should be able to go to our front end here, and when I refresh, it should give me it should console.log that JSON. And it didn't. So let's see. So this is our error right here. Request failed to status code 404. Okay, I might have put in the URL wrong. /movies/popular /movies/popular. Sorry, guys. Okay, we'll save that, and let's refresh this page again. Cool. All right, so you see it console.logged our response for us. And this is super cool because it means that our React app is now making requests to our server, which is querying the API from the MovieDB, and we're getting a response back from that API to our server and back to our front end. So from here, we can just take this data and use it to render things on the screen and make it look nice. And that's what I'm going to cover in the next section of the video. Alright guys, so now we can get to the fun part, which is making things show up on the screen and making it look nice and pretty. So last time we left off, we were able to make an API call from our React app and get all that data back from the API to our front end. So now we want to display that data. So let's go over how to do that real quick. So we're going to go back to our text editor. I'm going to go back to my app.js. And so right now I'm just console.logging response.data. If I want to be able to display that data on the front end, then I'm going to need to store it on the front end, and we can do that using React State. So if I want to use state, I need a constructor. Use super. Okay, and then you can make your state object here. I'm going to declare a property in state called movies list, and this is just going to be an empty array that's going to hold all of my movie objects. Okay. Now, every time the component mounts, instead of console.logging response.data, I want to set the state. So I'm going to use this.setState, and we're going to set the state of movies list to response.data.results. Why did I do that? I'm going to show you in just a second here. So you know when you get this response back, your response.data is this whole object here. Now the array that we need is stored in a property of that object called results, and it's this one here. So what I want to do is I don't want to set movies list to the whole object. I just want the list of movies here. So that's going to be response.data.results. Down here, if I want to see if that worked, I can just console.log this.state.movies list. Okay, I'm going to remove this console.log because we know that's working now. And now when this page refreshes, it's a blank array initially, and then once that promise comes back, you see your results here. Next, what we want to do is we want to render each one of these movies individually. So right now we have an array of movies. If we want to go through and iterate through that array of movies and render each one, then we can do that using JavaScript's array.map function. So here I'm going to say const movies. I'm just going to assign a variable movies, and what movies is going to do is just going to go through your movies list, and then it's going to map. Now the map method can have two parameters. First one's going to be the current value or your current movie, and the second one's going to be the index of that array. Okay, so inside of this callback function, what I want to do is I want to return some JSX that will just, here, we'll do something simple. I just want to return an H1 or a paragraph tag, a P tag that just says movie dot, and if we look here, we can just grab movie dot title, for example. Okay, so if I refresh that, go back to my app, oh, it's not going to show up quite yet because I still need to render this variable movies down here. So basically, to walk you through what's happening here is we declare a variable called movies, and then inside of movies, we're storing the return value of the title as a within a p tag. So what makes React so powerful is that it can generate JSX for us using JavaScript. So here I have an array. I map through the array. I iterate through each movie, and I'm going to grab the movie title and render it on the screen in a p tag using movie.title. Now, I have all of that stored in a variable called movies. If I want to actually render it in my app, I'll go to this return down here, and then I'll return the variable movies. I'm going to wrap it around in curly braces because this is JavaScript, and if you want to render JavaScript in JSX, you have to wrap it with curly braces. So now when we look at our app and it refreshes, it gives us all the movies here. Yeah, so that's really cool, guys. But it's boring, right? All it is text right now. No one wants to see that. So next thing we want to do is we want to bring in the pictures with it. Okay, so if we look at the data we're getting here, and let's just inspect an individual object. So this is for the movie It. Some APIs will give you an image URL, some won't. This one doesn't, for example, but what it does give you is a path to either the backdrop image for the movie or the poster for the movie. So we're going to use the poster here. So with the movieDB, if you read their documentation, the way their API works is that in order to access images, it's through a different URL than the one we're using to request this data here. So URL that they use is this right here. http image.tmdb.org/t/p/original. I'm going to include all these links in the comments section too, so you guys don't have to type it out or whatever. So this is the base URL. So let's say, for example, I wanted to grab the picture for it. I could just put this in instead, and then for the backdrop, I'll grab that path right here, or the poster, not the backdrop. Sorry. Put the path in, and then when I type that into my browser, I get this poster right here. Okay, so that's how you access images essentially. You just have a base URL and then the backdrop or the poster path. So if I want to render an image, I'll just use an image tag. Source is going to be API, or not API URL up here. I'm sorry. Image URL. Image URL slash. Oh, image URL. You don't need the slash because it's included. And then you're going to go movie.poster. What was it? Poster underscore path. I might have to check that again. Poster underscore path. Okay. Oh, and just real quick, we're getting this error right here because when you return JSX, you can only return one item. So if I want to return multiple elements, then I need to wrap it all in a div. So we'll go ahead and do that right here. And then we'll take these two, the image and the p tag, and we'll drop it inside of the div. So let's see what that gives us. All right, cool. So this is what we wanted. Yeah, those images are huge. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to scale the images down. We're going to store each of the images and the movie title in a card. So if you don't know what a card is, if you look at Material UI's card, Material UI is just a styling library for React. Cards aren't specific to Material UI, but to give you guys an example of what we're going for, it's something like this, where you've got the picture and then a little bit of blank space and some text. So that's this is what we're going to try to make with our movie posters. Okay, so to do that, we're going to do a little bit of styling. I'm going to say div class name equals movie card. Okay. And then now for our CSS, we can go to app.css file. I was supposed to get rid of all this. You don't really need this. This came with the Create React app, so you can delete that. .movie card here. Okay, so I want to give my card a height, 50 view height, and width will say like 30% of the screen. We'll save that. Let's see what that looks like. It's not perfect, but it's more along the lines of what we're looking for now. Alrighty guys, and the next thing we're going to want to do to make it look nice is we're going to give it some box shadow. So we'll go 0, 0, 4 pixels, 0, and we'll just give it a color of 111. So that's not quite black, it's one shade lighter. And we'll also throw in a margin of 5 pixels just so the cards are a little bit more evenly spaced out. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Cool. Yeah, so now it's starting to look more like a card, right? But we don't want everything to be just in a single list like this. We want to make it look nice, and we want some rows, right? So to do that, first let's get rid of this H1. We don't need that anymore. And what we're going to do is in app, we want to use flexbox. So I'll say display flex. Flex direction is going to be a row. Flex wrap. Do you want to wrap? And then now for justify content, we can say, let's say like, I'll just say center, for example, and then I want an item center too. I think that's okay. Allow. Okay. And now it looks like this. Yeah, so it's not quite like the example I showed you at the beginning, but you can see this is how it starts to take form. That's where I'm going to wrap up the video for now. Definitely feel free to play with this if you want. I'm also going to add a link to the GitHub repository for my code if you want to look at how I did things specifically. In a later video, I'll show you guys how to do the search functionality and how to add a nav bar and other cool stuff like that. But for now, this is it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and hope you guys learned something along the way. As always, thank you for watching, guys, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.